And therefore, MPs will not be eligible to run again after they have passed the 10-year mark of being elected.
There's a Liberal leadership candidate. His name is Frank Baylis. He's coming out of Quebec. He feels like we should be limiting the power of the House of Commons and the Senate in his defense. I have to admit that there are maybe one or two of his ideas that are okay to examine and see. You look a little closer and then you realize, wait a minute, what is it with the Liberal leadership and their desire to want to limit power of the people? It's a strange sort. It's like the one thing they all have in common, right? They want to take things away from the people.
And therefore, MPs will not be eligible to run again after they have passed the 10-year mark of being elected. As for senators, they would be limited to one 10-year period.
Regular viewers of the Canadian Shield know that I believe we should have an elected Senate like they do in both Australia and the United States, as well as other countries around the world. However, the Australian model I bring up because it's a Westminster model, and he was mentioning the Westminster model. So I mean, I agree with him on that. I think that we should go even further and just let them be elected every 4 years like everybody else. There's a lot of problems with the Senate. As for the limits, the term limits on the MPs, I don't agree with it at all, because his premise is that you're not allowed into my club if you've been here for 10 more years, and somehow this is going to be better for the country. However, that implies that the community that the individuals that are being elected represent are always undergoing change. Now, why would you want to say to yourself, here's my elected representative who's been doing this job for X number of years. They're the one that I want to send to the House of Commons, and it doesn't matter what you say about their term limits. I want to send them. And as a result, you can't limit who the representative of the people are. I mean, we should be electing the senators, absolutely, but the members of parliament to say, oh, I've had him representing me my whole life. He was, the person that helped me get this problem solved, or she, or whatever it may be. That's something that we as the people have the right to send whomever we choose, whenever we choose.
The concentration of power in the hands of party leaders has led to a serious degradation in our debates and our ability to get work done. Therefore, we're going to redistribute their power. We will take power from party leaders and give it back to the Speaker of the House, the MPs, and the citizens of Canada. The Canadian system is a Westminster system. However, we are the only system in the world that uses the Westminster system where the Speaker does not get to decide who speaks. That power has been consumed by the party leaders, so we're going to take it from them and give it back to the Speaker of the House. With respect to members of Parliament, they will be freed to do what they were sent to do, which is to represent their constituents. So we're going to free their voices to allow them to speak up when they should, and they are representing their constituents. This is a representative democracy. And finally, we're going to use the electronic petition system to allow Canadians to bring debates into the House of Commons. Petitions that garner more than 75,000 signatures will then be debated in Parliament.
So you see what I mean? He wants to take away now the power of the party leader, because in his mind, somehow things are getting done in the House of Commons when people in question period. But really, that's not true, is it? Right? Things get done by the individual members in committee, whether they be assigned to that committee, whether they show up on a short term. And then he says, oh, don't worry. We're going to take the power away from the party leaders. We're going to give the chair the right to choose. And this will somehow give the MPs in the House a voice. But the MPs in the question period, where most of the time the Liberal government ignores the question, they are given a voice and given the right to look after the people in committee or in legislation. Question period, nothing gets presented. There are questions asked and answered, certainly, or at least in theory, but there's no legislation put forward. There's no grievances of any kind that are addressed with any substance. Those are happening at different times. And we know from the procedures of the House that most of the time the representative is going to get their opinions heard in committee, they're going to have a stronger impact on a bill. They're going to have a stronger influence on questioning witnesses. What I smell here, based on another answer that this guy has, is I see a man who realizes that his party is not very good at debate. I watched a lot of House of Commons, and I rarely hear the third and fourth row say anything in the House of Commons from the Liberal Party. So I think that this is just a little bit of an overreach. I don't agree with this system. Now he's like, oh, let's allow people over a certain number of signatures to speak about petitions or to force the government to talk about petitions. I mean, there's something to that, but 75,000 is not enough of signatures. That 75,000 would mean that a special interest group could basically take over the House of Commons, right? They could just basically send a different petition every week and force you to debate about it. But 1 million, that seems like a reasonable number. It does two things. It engages in petition, and it causes people, the ordinary average individual, to take more of an interest in the parliamentary system that runs this country. And remember, the only way that we're going to keep any of them honest is by paying attention to what they're doing. In 2016, nobody was paying attention, and now everybody is paying attention, and they are on their tiptoes. And we have to keep that pressure up forever if we want to have a country that is not run by, despots and criminals.
We will introduce a second chamber for debate into the House of Commons. A second chamber allows government business and legislation to move faster through the system. You have to think of it as a two-way highway. The main debates will still take place in the House of Commons. However, uncontested business such as petition presentations, member statements, members' motions, and the like will take place in the second chamber.
I looked into this a little bit, and they don't really refer to it as the second chamber in Australia. They refer to it as the main committee, which is a different context. Now, they call it something else now, but when it was first founded, it was called the main committee, meaning that legislatively, the document that was put before the House of Commons is still passing through committee. It's just passing through at an expedited rate. Then you have to ask yourself, well, who gets permission to go there? Who asks questions when they're doing follow-up? All the things that go along with that. There didn't seem to be too much negative blowback on the procedure in the Australian government. I didn't really look up the British one. Whether or not it would work in Canada, it just would depend on how it flows with giving people in this other chamber the same voice that you're looking to give people in other committee. Or would that just become a third house where it gets entrenched? I'm not sure. I would have to look at it a little more deeper. But on paper, like in theory, okay, if it gets things done faster, let's give it a try, right? Not a bad idea.
To your point, what's happening today is completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. I want Canadians to know that their government has not been working for 3 months. However, they've been getting paid for 3 months. This is completely unacceptable in my book, and there's no great reason for it. There's no national emergency. This is just gamesmanship by one man that wants to have an election at all costs. So he's decided that it's in his interest to absolutely gridlock the whole system and get nothing done. Absolutely, completely unacceptable behavior. This is completely wrong.
So we see now, in the end of it all, you're just another partisan hack. Because everybody is aware that if the Liberal Party had surrendered those documents like they were told to do, the House of Commons would have been flowing with all kinds of information. The House of Commons would have been flowing with all kinds of procedures. But the Liberal Party gridlocked, decided that they could snub their nose at the will of the House. They decided that they were too good to follow parliamentary procedure. It doesn't have anything to do with the Conservative Party. It has everything to do with the Liberal Party not surrendering those documents for the Green Slush Fund. And if you were being impartial as you're trying to pretend you are at the microphone, you would say that because that's the truth. You wouldn't say to yourself, oh, no, it's all about one guy, blah, blah, blah. It's really not. Unless you count that one guy as being Justin Trudeau. Then it is absolutely about one guy. But it's not the Conservative guy. In no way, shape, or form is it the Conservative guy. The Canadian people didn't say anything. Did you notice? Because they know. They're like, yeah, we want to see what's in those papers. We want to know where our money's going. Just like you see them doing with the Doge. The common people understand what it means to have a budget. That's the thing that these elites never understand. They think that you don't get what they're doing. It's so far above you. But we understand some basic concepts. We understand that there's money missing and we want to know where it went. To say that it's all about, gridlocking the house for blah, blah, blah. If you'd have given up those documents like you were instructed to do by the House of Commons, there would have been a normal session that would have just been different arguments over different topics. Instead, you elected to tell yourself that you were too good to submit to the will of the House. You were too good, by extension, to submit to the will of the people, because they are there to represent the people, like you just said 5 minutes ago in your opening remarks. Don't try to gaslight us. We are paying attention. And we know that the House of Commons didn't do anything for 3 months because the Liberal Party decided that they didn't want to surrender the documents that the House had ordered them to surrender in the spring of the year. And the Conservative Party stood their ground and said, no, we want those documents. And the people said, you know what? Yeah, we want those documents. We want to see where all this money's gone. Because it's not Conservative who embezzled the money, right? Or NDP for that matter. Everybody who took money out of that green slush fund were friends of the Liberal Party. This guy here taking a run at, Pierre Poilievre after he's trying to pretend like he's all Mr. Neutral. That's just the way that it goes, I guess, when you're in the Liberal Party. They say one thing, they do another. All right, I'm going to wrap here. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.